Hello.
Hi, hi, hi. Hi, 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 hi.
Uh, so excited for today's episode.
I know.
We have the wonderful Julia Phillips talking to us about her new book, Bear.
So good. So
Um,
good.
but first, shall we shout out some brand new bookies that come out today?
Yes. First up is Anyone's Ghost by August Thompson, who was just on the podcast. Now's your chance to get the book. Also, The Coin by Yasmin Zaher. That comes out today.
Nivola by Paolo Bacigalupi comes out today, which I have said before, I'm curious to expand my fantasy horizons, and this sounds so great. I'm
I love the
excited.
cover, that big eyeball.
And we also love our Irish girlies.
Yep.
And
The
quickly, while they
Boise's
still
too.
have horses, is a story collection from Jan Carson that looks so good that I'm really excited to dive into. And A Thousand Times Before by Asha Tanki. I'm really excited for that too. And it's one of the Book of the Month picks. And
Oh, I
this
didn't
has
know that.
been, yeah, it's been on my radar for a minute and it looks so good. It's also a debut. Tita Ramirez's Tell It to Me looks great. Again, beautiful cover. We love a beautiful cover. Kat Shook's Humor Me, which I have not read, but our friend of the pod, Maddie in the Books, read it and I believe enjoyed it. A lot of great things coming out. Oh, and
Really?
last week, J. Courtney Sullivan's The Cliffs came out, which
Yeah.
I'm excited to check out, which is now Reese's book club pick. So many things.
Also,
Hard to keep track.
Mateo Oscar Por's The Great Hemisphere also came out last week, which we missed. Yeah.
Yes.
So
He's very handsome.
he's very handsome. Yes.
So buy the book just to see his author photo. We're gays reading. Um Speaking of We're Gays Reading, if this is your first time with us, thank you for joining us. If you're coming back, thanks for coming back. We're happy to have you. Happy to be in your ears again.
Speaking of bears,
If you like what you're hearing, please share us with your friends. Follow us on social media at Gays Reading. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a review because it just helps other people find us, which is exciting. And on today's show, we have Julia Phillips talking to us about her new book, Bear. Julia is the best-selling author of the novel Disappearing Earth, which was a finalist for the National Book Award and one of the New York Times Book Review's 10 Best Books of the Year. A 2024 Guggenheim Fellow, she lives with her family in Brooklyn.
awesome.
Awesome. I'm Jason,
I'm Brett.
and enjoy this grisly episode of Gaze
Gaze
Reading.
reading.
Hello.
Oh,
Are you there?
I'm here. Hi,
I'm
guys.
here.
Hi.
Can you
Mm.
hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello. Are you there? I'm here. Can you hear me?
Calling in the woods. I got you. I got you. You're good.
I
You're
was
really
like,
good.
I was like a bear joke and a Zoom joke. What?
That's what it's all about in this day of contemporary literature. All jokes are Zoom jokes.
Unrelated to your book that I have to talk to you about before we
Okay.
start, because, and by
Okay.
before we start, we're recording. So obviously this is going to
Fabulous.
be in the episode, but this could be a conversation that lasts the whole hour. So just in case it has to happen now, why the hell were you wearing a snake in your wedding photos?
Okay. Okay. I will tell you, which is we got married at the city clerk's office. We walked across the Brooklyn Bridge. On the Brooklyn Bridge on a Friday afternoon, it turns out there were, I feel like I've never seen this before or since, but it must be a thing that I've just missed all these years I've lived here. There were like snake handlers who, for $20, will put a snake on you and take a picture of you. Have you seen this?
Yeah, it's called a
This
child's birthday party.
No, I've
so
walked across
my
the Brooklyn Bridge a couple times and that
I
has
know.
never
That's how
happened.
I felt too. That's how I felt too. But
You were almost conscripted into the circus, by the way.
I was almost conscripted into the circus. I had never seen this before, but I wasn't sure if it was just the sort of thing. I also have to say, on this afternoon where we got married, I'd never seen so many people getting married before. As we were walking around, I kept noticing there were all
Oh,
these other couples getting married, which I also realized when I was pregnant. All of a sudden, I looked around and I was like, everyone's pregnant at the same
yeah.
time. And it's
Mm.
just me noticing. I was also in a snake handling kind of mood because there
Mm.
were all these snake handlers on the bridge, and my sister-in-law's boyfriend at the time thought it would be very funny to pay these guys $20 to put snakes around our necks. So they did. They paid them $20 to put snakes around it. They were on our necks for about 30 seconds or whatever.
Right.
And then a picture was taken that made us then look so cool, so
Yes.
brave, so
Yes.
impressive.
Yes. I was like,
did-
I can't talk to Julia because she's too cool for me. She had a snake around her neck during her wedding picture.
The next book is
Where I
called
was-
Snake.
Where I was working at the time, I had all sorts of complicated wedding feelings going into it, which I didn't realize I had about like gender and being a bride and all sorts of stuff that kind of was coming up for me, which was weird. And so one of the ways this manifested is that I was at work at the time, where I worked at the time. I didn't tell anyone I was getting married, which like, whatever. I don't know why I made the decisions I made. So then when I went back to work on Monday, I was like, and they said, "Hey, how was your weekend?" And I said, "Oh, I got married. And here's a picture of us with some snakes around our necks." And everyone there was so impressed by me. And it was like probably the coolest thing I've ever done. Impressed that I could keep a secret and impressed that I look like I handle snakes all the time, which I don't and I can't. So I don't know why I chose to give that impression at the time.
I think even touching it, I'd have a hard time. I think I might have had a snake around my neck a la your wedding picture when I was a kid.
Yes. Yeah,
But
totally. Child's birthday party.
Right. Yeah. But I don't know. I've gotten a little more heebie-jeebie as I've gotten older.
Oh, yeah.
Because you realize what it could do to you.
Maybe I think there's also something
Yeah.
about like when you are, as you get older, you're like, you know what? It's okay that I don't like this thing, and I'm just
Yeah.
gonna
Yes, totally.
not like it. There's no, so yeah, I'm like, no, I don't like reptiles, so I don't have to.
I felt
Do you remember
like
that
them.
story that went around about
Yeah.
the girl who had a pet boa and she let it sleep in the bed with her and she thought it was so cute because it would lay along her length. And
wait,
the
measuring her
vet-
body.
Yes, and the vet said, you have to stop this. It's measuring your body to eat you.
Okay, I do think that this is a chain letter urban legend that we
I
received
think it probably
on
is too,
AOL.
but I love it.
Well, and thank God Brett sent it to 12 people because
That's
then it
exactly
didn't
right.
happen to him.
Saved some
Right.
lives on that day.
I started that urban legend. I was
Oh
like,
my-
tell
that's
Julia to put the snake
so
back.
funny. Put the snake back.
Not in the
Oh,
bed. Not
my
in the bed.
The bed.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I've
No.
gotten older, I'm like, I don't like this thing. So I'm no longer going to try it ever again.
I get that completely. I actually feel that way increasingly about sharing movies and
Yeah.
also cliff jumping off into water. I realized
Have you done that?
What
I've done that. I know, right? I've done that multiple times, and each time was worse and worse. And finally, I had to realize of all the ways I would like to be adventurous, brave, and fun, this ain't one, babe. I'm
Yeah,
not
because
gonna
now
be
you have
adventurous,
people that
brave, and fun
depend
this
on
time.
you. So it's a
Oh,
bigger deal.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I depend on me. I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not trying to mess around with this. But yeah, it feels like a fun, rustic summertime activity that I would love to embrace and be cool. Not happening.
What are
That's
ways
not-
that you like to be adventurous and fun then?
Oh, like I kill the bugs in my house.
So do I.
Doesn't it make you feel so cool?
Sometimes, yeah.
Not so cool.
It's gotten to the point where I'm like more annoyed that my husband
Yeah.
like can't deal with it. I'm like, it
I
is
get
so
that.
small, just smush it.
Sometimes they're so big. Sometimes I don't know how many cockroaches you have in your home, but we have had more than one. What are your guys' brave things that you do that you think, oh, I'm adventurous, so I'm fun?
Very little for me.
Anyway, let's talk about your book.
I'm very prone to injury. So I think I'm emotionally brave.
Yes.
That's a good one. Good.
Yeah. Like
You
I'm
can have
very
conflicts. You can have tough conversations. you can-
yeah.
That's really
I
good.
think so.
Yeah, I'm so impressed. I'm honestly so impressed.
Yeah. Brett, what about you?
I got nothing. No, I'm really trying to think of what because I'm more aware as I've gotten older of the fears of what can happen
Yes.
with doing something.
Mm.
Even going skiing, like after 15 years, I'm just not doing it and like raising kids and then suddenly going back to
Yes.
it and being like, I remember going down for the first time. And first of all, it hurts because like you're older and it's hard. And it was harder to get up. Like when you're little and your center of gravity is so low, all of that changed. And I was like, wow, you could really have an accident. You can really smack your head. You could really do all these things that.
That's
So
so
I don't know.
impressive.
I think the only thing I've done in my life in terms of fearlessness is sometimes I've just gone ahead, even having kids. It's a thing
Yeah.
like, we're going to do this and not think about it, because to think about it would give you 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't do it versus just going ahead. So I feel like in that way, and I think I was the one who pushed my husband to really have kids, all of
Yeah.
those kind of things. I think I'm the one in that. So that's what I would probably say. There are points in life when I've been like, it's the fear, feel the fear and do it anyway. Isn't that the
Yes.
mantra?
When I think about everyday bravery these days, I think very much about my interactions with my kids. I find that it's very terrifying going into it, and it's very terrifying living it all the time. And I've been noticing lately that my old big kid is getting more independent. He does things that freak me out, but I don't want to curtail him or make him feel unfree. So he's like running down the block toward the intersection, and he never has run into the street before. But I'm like, okay, I'm going to make the decision to trust that he's not going to run into the street, which is terrifying because it only takes one time. And notice that instead of saying, hey, stop, don't do that, I'll say, I'm really scared right now. I'm shouting at him. I feel worried that you're going to run into the street, but you just keep going, keep being brave.
I
But
love that
I'm
you say that,
afraid.
though. I love that
Interesting.
way to say it, though.
So scared. But I think about his memories of his childhood. Will it be of him doing fun things while behind him I'm just shrieking about how scared I am?
Mm.
That
Probably.
voice in his head.
I mean, that's like the perfect segue into talking about the book, though.
Very scary stuff.
Not just scary, but that's so much of what the book is about, right? It's people just being scared for each other. And it's not, a little bit is don't do that, but some of it is please don't do that because I'm worried about you.
Yeah. And I think
And
this,
what happens to
you-
us? What
Mhm.
happens to us?
What is your elevator pitch for Bear?
Okay, I've got a short elevator pitch that's one sentence, and then
Great.
I'll try on a longer one for size two, which is this is a story about two sisters whose lives are changed when they meet a bear. The longer version
Perfect.
of that is that it's about these two sisters who live in this beautiful place called San Juan Island off the coast of Washington State. And this island is this stunning tourist destination, but these sisters are not having a dreamy experience there. They're having trouble making ends meet, and they're dreaming of the day they're going to get away. And they have plans and visions for how that's going to happen, but all those plans and visions change when this wild animal shows up at their front door and sends them off in these ways they never anticipated they'd go.
It's a modern fairy tale and a fairy FERRY tale.
That's true.
You're
That's
welcome.
true.
Oh.
I love that. It is. It's a fairy tale in both ways. One of the sisters, the main character, Sam, works concessions on the ferry, FERRY, that connects the mainland to their island. So she goes back and forth on this ferry all day long, but can't ever seem to get off it to start the next thing that she's going to do.
It's interesting when I saw that it was inspired by Snow White and Rose Red, the Grimm's fairy tale. Well, I guess it's a fairy tale popularized by Grimm. It's not one that you often hear about. I was like,
No.
oh, she pulled from the trunk, deep in the trunk.
So it was a minor one. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I did it in summer stock, actually. I was the
Are you
bear.
kidding me?
No.
Really?
Yeah. We
I
did
want
a
to hear
summer
all
stock.
about this.
No, it was just summer stock, and you would do. I was like in the junior company, which meant
Yeah.
that like you weren't on the main stage shows, so you toured around New Hampshire and all around the New England
Yes.
area, and we would do these series like they're like these kids, these Grimm fairy tales, but they're like the
Yeah.
tortoise and the
Yes.
hare. And we did Snow White and Rose. Yeah, it was Snow White and Rose Red. Yeah.
Okay, I'm so curious about this because this fairy tale, which is about two sisters meeting a bear, but in a very different way, a very different
Yeah.
context, different kind of relationship. To me, the original fairy tale has an odd story. The story itself is not satisfying. And part of the effort of this book was trying to take those elements that I found really compelling, the sisters, the bear, their relationship, and shape them into a narrative that made more sense to me. And so I'm curious about the dramatization of the fairy tale. Like, what did it make sense? Was it
Yeah,
cohesive?
but you have to imagine it's distilled down because the original
Yeah.
fairy tale is, frankly, it's closer to Beauty and the Beast, right? There's this
Mhm.
creature this prince that's trapped in this bear's body. And
Yeah.
so that's what it's still distilled down to because it was for little
Yeah.
kids. So it was all about, oh, we're two sisters and we're living with our dying grandmother, but look, there's this bear and there's a mean troll.
Yes.
And so that really becomes the centerpiece, and love sets everything free,
Mm.
Yeah.
so to
Yeah.
speak. And this really pretty, which, it's so weird too, because for a Grimm's fairy tale, it almost doesn't follow the pattern of what so many Grimm fairy tales are, which are frankly grim.
Totally.
So this one's a much more kind of soft landing. So interesting.
It's
except for our dwarf who gets
I was
Yes,
just gonna
battered
say
to death.
that. But it's right because you looked at it from a different perspective. But if you were the dwarf's mother, then I think you'd
Yeah.
see it as quite grim.
that's like
Um,
Wicked, right?
Yes, totally.
yeah,
These poor villainized creatures and characters.
yeah. So you have a brother, you don't have a sister.
That's
You
true.
wrote this sister story. Do you feel, did
Yes.
you, was this a little bit of writing the sister you don't have?
I think I was, to be honest, I think working on this book, I was writing a lot of the best friends I have had in that
Mm.
their relationship, the two sisters in this story are living together with their mom, who's sick, but they are now in their late 20s and they're firmly adults. Although I think sometimes they feel like they've been in this kind of place of arrested development because they've been waiting for the next stage to happen with their mom for a long time. And her illness has been a lot longer and more difficult than they anticipated. So they're sisters, but they're also roommates and they're also friends, really old friends. And they have a dynamic that I think I've had in a lot of my friendships and that I wanted to explore here, which is when you know someone for a really long time, you're super close to them, and you feel like we know each other so well, we don't even have to talk about it. All these things can go unsaid. I have certain expectations or certain things that I think you should do, or certain things I think friends should do, or certain ways we should be there for each other. And of course, that's understood between us. Of course, we don't need to get into it because we've had
We
this relationship
understand
for
each
so long.
other.
We understand each other.
Yeah.
And then something happens that turns out that maybe you don't understand each other and
Mm.
you don't know each other as well as you thought you did. And the feelings of loyalty and love, and also expectation and disappointment, and the heartbreak of that within a long-term relationship is really what I wanted to write about here. My brother and I have not lived together in adulthood, so we have not had this particular dimension of our relationship. But certainly I have had very close girlfriends with whom these loyalties and disappointments have really shaped our relationship.
You're adding
Yeah.
to that relationship this claustrophobia that exists, because not only have they made these plans to get off the island, it's all kind of hinging on the passing of their mother who's sick, but they're also caretakers for her as well, which is its own stress and its own kind of dynamic that just levels it up even more to add this pressure, it's so effective.
I'm so glad. The dynamic they have, I think, is definitely influenced by their sibling relationship there, because the older sister has taken on more and the younger sister has taken on less in a way over time, or the way that they've assigned themselves responsibilities have been, obviously, you're the responsible one. Obviously, you're the one who can handle this. So I think that assigning of roles, especially in a kind of two sibling pair, can happen really easily, really young, really foundationally. And then it's pretty hard to shake. And it sets up some tough times down the road for sure.
Is your brother older or younger?
He is older. I'm the younger sister.
Did you see him as the responsible one?
I saw him as I think when we were very young, I saw him as the deciding one. So he was the one who picked the games. He said, here are the rules of the game. Here is how I win the game. He was 4 years older. So
I'm also the older brother. I can relate to everything that you're saying.
You tell them what's what. You tell them what's what. And I think when you're really little, as the younger sibling, that's a role that you embrace because you think, how fantastic. My parents are in a different generation, maybe a different world than I am. And my friends I don't live with, but the older sibling is such an instructor. They tell you what to do.
Whether it doesn't have to be a physically take care of, but you feel taken care of. There's a safety in that.
A huge safety in that. And I think a comfort sometimes in being petulant in that. It's a nice thing to have the safety of that relationship to complain about, or say, oh, my older brother is so annoying, but of course he is the one who makes the world for me. I think as we got a little bit older, a dynamic between us that is definitely present in the book is that he was the more socially at ease one. He was the one who was better able to talk to grown-ups, or played sports in high school, or could make small talk with people. And I felt, maybe as a function of being younger, but also maybe as my own personality, I felt a little weirder or more prickly or less able to integrate socially. And I think Sam definitely has that in the book. Her older sister
Sure.
she feels is like smoother in the world and able to talk to people more, which is a burden for the older one too, to have the responsibility of being the one who makes nice, or the one who has to, I don't know, you do all the smiling, you do all the handshaking, and meanwhile your sibling gets to seemingly do whatever they want.
And to that point, it's also the responsibility of being the responsible one.
Yes, totally.
Mm.
And so I, as the older sibling, related so
Totally.
deeply to having an opportunity to break from that.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
was like, I don't ever feel like, I don't want to say I don't ever feel like I can be irresponsible,
Yeah.
but it is important to me to be responsible,
Mm.
Yes.
whether it's to set an example or because I want to be there for my two younger siblings, or I don't know exactly what it is, but like seeing Elena sort of break free from her responsibility was alarming and also
Yes.
like freeing and exciting for her.
Yes, totally.
But
Totally.
back to what you said about Sam, and it's so great, the kind of the prickliness, which I think personally I loved and I hated. But
Yes.
one of the things that I think works so well with the novel is because most of this is told through Sam's lens, right?
Yeah.
Which heightens the kind of paranoia, which heightens
Mhm.
this idea of losing grasp of any sense of control that she might think she has, while
Yeah.
also it screws with you a bit as the reader, I found, because
Yeah.
you're watching what Elena's doing. And even though some of it, in regards to the bear, which we'll get to in a second, but in regards to the bear, but also just her own hopes and dreams, all of it makes sense, right? And even later, when Madeline comes into the
Yeah.
picture, and who seemingly would seem like she's doing her job, she works for the Parks Department, correct? Or
Yes. Yes, totally.
but through Sam's lens, because things are escalating, it starts to become, for lack of a better word, thriller-esque, because you really start to wonder everything Sam's doing. Wait, what are you doing and where are you headed?
Yeah.
And what kind of reckless behavior are you going to get into because you're impulsive at this point? Slow down,
Yes.
girl.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. Sam, it was so fun to write. For my first book, I moved around perspectives a lot. And for this book, it was such a thrill to
Hmm,
be inside Sam, because she has a very intense version of what I think all of us have sometimes, which is that she doesn't want to perceive reality such as it is. She wants to have an experience of her life that is confirming of her own thoughts and her own beliefs, and validating to her and consistent with where she wants her life to go. So her relationship with her sister, for example, that her sister is having a freeing, liberating experience is, yeah, scary for her sister, but also wonderful.
Mhm.
But for Sam, that she can't even reconcile with the idea that her sister wants to have that, because she's
sure.
saying, "You're going to be free? Well, what, free of me? You're going to leave me? We're in this together. You want to leave me?" And that itself is so horrifying that she can't sit with that reality. She can't accept that. And every single time it keeps coming closer and closer to her, she pushes back on it harder. And it does make her desperate and reckless and frightened and ready to lash out, which I think is the fun of a narrative and of an escalating drama. But
Yeah.
oof, it's a tough mental state to be in, for sure.
The way
Sure.
that you're both talking sort is really articulating how I felt reading the book.
Mhm.
There was this, not dissimilar from a fairy tale, there was this repetition sort of throughout
Mhm.
the book. And for me, I felt like I was on like a teacups style ride that was like moving slowly, and then it like kept getting faster without me even realizing it. And
Mm,
I was
Mhm.
like, on one hand, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm hearing some of the same information again, but as you just said, it's escalating or it's building in some way. And I all of it. And then suddenly I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna get thrown off the teacups. But because things repeat themselves in a fairy tale, because that's part of the like moral way to learn, it was alarming and
Yeah.
exciting. And come the end, you're just like, oh my God, get me off the ride.
And who's been spinning this teacup this whole
Yes,
time? Has it been
exactly.
her sort of creating this? How much has been outside of her and how much has been inside of her
that's right.
that's
Yeah.
creating this wildness?
Wildness, the bear, I think
Wildness.
we don't need to talk to, I don't, not to give anything away because we are spoiler free on Gaze Reading, But throughout the whole book, I think the reader is thinking, is the bear real? Is the bear a metaphor? What is the bear? Is it a capital B? Is it a lowercase b? Like, what's going on here? And there, in turn, is this like hum underneath the entire book of fear. And I think as humans, we can read this and the bear can be whatever we want it to be in our own life. I'm curious, what is your bear?
Let's see. When I was working on this book, so that this bear in the book that comes and keeps coming closer and closer to them on this teacup ride, and each time it comes, things escalate. This bear is this real animal, at least in my view,
Yeah.
who shows up, and it's reality. It like walks around and it poops and pees and it scratches things and it eats things. Its reality crashes into these sisters' intense desire for a kind of metaphorical transformation. You know, one sister really wants freedom in one way, one sister really wants freedom in another way, and both of them see the bear as either representing that or representing the threat to that. So they throw all this symbolic weight onto it. When I was working on this book, especially, I was also throwing symbolic weight onto the bear. And I was throwing symbolic weight onto the bear. I started this book in the end of 2021. I had my first kid in June 2020, which was a pretty negative experience, I would say. Having a baby a couple months into a lockdown was a bummer. And it resulted in a really challenging first year of life for him and first year of parenthood for us. Very challenging. I'm sure all of us had extremely challenging 2020s in different ways. But what the result was that by the end of 2021, I felt so intensely and had been feeling so intensely that the life I had was not a life that I recognized at all. And to jump back to our earlier conversation, I had thought of myself as brave and adventurous and willing to try new things and pursuing a life that was broad and varied and stimulating. And then over time, over this experience, I found myself clinging to safety and stability, and I didn't want to go out of my house, and I didn't want to ever get sick again, and I didn't want anyone to touch my child or be near me. And I just felt so constrained. I didn't recognize myself at all. And I started to, as this new sense of myself and what my life was and what potential or limitations it had took over, I was also overtaken by an increasingly desperate desire to shake myself back to that other self that I recognized. I was like, I just need something to show up and change me. Or I just need like this, if I could just snap my fingers and be me again, the me that I recognize, I would do anything for that. But I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know how to cross this bridge from this sad and scared self to a self that I wished I could be. And I really wanted a bear at the door, I think, by which I mean symbolically, I wanted something externally to show up that was brave and exciting and wild and free feeling and made me feel wild and free and was so shocking that it could get me out, that it could get me stepping out of my own head or stepping out of my own one bedroom apartment. Like I needed that so badly and I couldn't find that strength in myself. I think that this story became that for me. When I started writing this book, it was so weird. It was different from any way I had ever written before. And I had gotten really deep down out of this desire for security and stability. I think I was like, I really want to write something that other people like, that other people approve of, that feels like a known quantity, that I would get an A+ and a gold star on. And this was so not that. This was just like, I don't know what people are going to like. I don't know what anyone does. I don't recognize myself or anything around me. So I'm just going to do whatever weird impulses are coming out of me. I'm just going to follow those. The writing of this ended up feeling wild and free and liberating and world shaking in exactly the way I needed. And it did end up feeling like a beast at the door. And it did make me, brought me back to the person I wanted to be or the life that I wanted to live. The bear was the bear in the end. You know, the book was the bear.
Yes, but what you're talking about is, I'm getting a little emotional because you just described yourself as Sam, the bear was ruining your life. It was COVID. It was not feeling like yourself. It was not wanting to go out into the world. And so
Yes.
you turned it on its head and created the bear in the other direction to free yourself. And
To become
Yeah.
Elena.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like such an empowering thought of what bogs us down. We can shift our perspective and harness it to push ourselves out there and be brave, back to what we were talking about at the beginning.
There's two
I love that.
quotes. There's two things she said, and it pairs into exactly what you're both talking about, where it says in here, she's talking about, Elena is talking to Sam about the bear, and she said, its presence had made Elena's ears keener, her eyes sharper, had shocked her senses into new sensitivity. It had looked right at her and taken her in. And it's almost like that. And then Elena says
Yes.
later, look, what's going on here isn't dangerous. It's magical. And it's the best thing that ever happened to us. So it's
Yes.
all tied into just what Jason is saying, what you're talking about, which is like you found the bear and the bear found you, and it helped you.
I started this project wanting so badly to get myself out of these pandemic feelings, but though now when I look at the project, I think, oh boy, I see this, because it's not a pandemic novel in that it's about face masks or washing your hands for 30 seconds, but it's so shaped by that feeling of stuckness and the desire for, like, this life can't really be real life. Like at any moment
Yeah.
now, we're going to go back to real life, and the real life is going to be better. At any moment now, we're going to break through to the better life. That, for me, that feeling was so defining of COVID. I think Sam, but the sections that you just read, that I think Sam can get so lost in the fantasy of the future. She thinks so much about how things are going to be better someday that she uses it as a way to get out of the present. The present is very unpleasant for her and hard for her. And it's been hard for a long time. And so she thinks about what else is out there in order to cope with what's going on. That is, I have to say, a coping mechanism I myself have shared many times. But Elena's talking about, when she's talking about her ears being keener, her senses being activated, and like she is present with she's saying the present right now has something in it that I don't want to run away from or fantasize away. I'm here, we're here, this is it, this is our lives. And there's actually something here that is beautiful and unforgettable, and something that we should be paying all our attention to right now, which is, I think, a beautiful way to live, although I'm not sure I would recommend Elena's method to achieving it.
No, but I would maybe recommend yours.
a little bit of fantasy on the
Yeah,
page.
yeah. So much of the book is about survival, obviously, and it means different things to different characters, and I think different people in real life. And a huge driving force, especially for Sam, our protagonist, is escaping where she lives. It was the place her grandparents lived, where her mom grew up, where she grew up. The idea of needing to leave home in order to make something of your life.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
I would say, yeah, I live right now 15 miles from where I grew up. So maybe I don't feel that way. I also grew up in New Jersey. And if you ask me if I'm going to ever go back to live in New Jersey, I would say, gosh, I hope not. My family.
Montclair wasn't for you?
It was not for me. It was not for me. Or maybe my parents they're still in the town where I grew up. My brother lives 20 minutes away now with his family. Many friends of mine moved back. It is clearly a objectively wonderful place to live, but I don't have fond memories of the person that I was. And so it's hard for me to have fond memories of the place.
Yeah.
And Sam is actually much warmer in the book toward the place that she grew up than I am. For me, where I grew up, I always felt, well, it's not even where. I don't know if this was your guys' experience with kids, but I did not like being a kid. And I think about it sometimes with my kids, actually. Sometimes my big kid, who's our only fully verbal child right now, the other one's too little, he wants to do something, and we're like, no, you can't do that. No, you got to go to bed. No, you have to, we got to go to camp right now. We got to do this. We got to do that. We have to keep a structure and a life for him. He has a limited amount of control. And sometimes you're like, man, that sucks. That sucks for you. When I come home, if I want to eat cake and take a nap, I just eat cake and take a nap. I have an extraordinary amount of freedom in my life now, perhaps an unusual amount. I think certainly an unusual amount, but I can almost all the time do what it is I want to do. And as a kid, I felt that very rarely, very rarely.
Mm.
And I often felt that my life was not in my control. I often felt stuck. I often felt so claustrophobic, so trapped. I think maybe by dint of being a child and you're not necessarily in control of your own life. I think Sam really struggles with that claustrophobia, although she doesn't match it so much with the place of her childhood. The place of her childhood, I think she regards as, in fact, beautiful and
Yeah.
liberated and free and gorgeous and wonderful. She doesn't like living in the same house now for a third generation,
Sure.
waiting around, not in her own control for the day that she can live on.
Mhm.
Did you guys feel that way when you were kids, or is it still sort of an angsty New Jersey teen vibe?
I think I never felt it as a little kid, but I think again, I felt protected. I felt secure. It was
Yeah.
going into teen years, like preteen, like the awkwardness and the realization that things were different and that you might be different. And
Yeah.
when begin to be set up in school and people are ostracizing other people and words begin to get attached and people
Mm.
stand out, that's when I couldn't wait to leave. I knew I couldn't wait to get out. I couldn't wait to get
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
When you're describing your childhood at that point in your life, had you taken day trips to New York City? Had you done any sort of exploring?
Yeah. My parents both worked in New York, and it seemed like the promise. I grew up in the New York City suburbs.
I think where I grew up didn't really see that there was world
Mhm.
outside. And so I think immediately when I saw the first phrase that comes to mind is greener pastures, but that's when I
More
saw
concrete pastures.
more
like-
concrete pasture. When I saw that there was more, I was like, oh, I want more.
Yeah.
And it was then that I started to feel a little stuck.
Interesting.
You
You
also
know,
wonder, I think, with Sam too, living on this island, which again is like an idyllic vacation
Yes.
spot. It's nature, it's beauty, it's water. But what that would be like to grow up in that and not, Jason, what you're just talking about of what else is out there? What else
Yeah.
Mhm.
is beyond this somewhere that's green kind of world that exists beyond this ferry of going back and forth? Where does that road lead you to?
Julia,
That
Yeah.
would be
what were
such a
you going to
cool
say?
thing.
I'm so
Oh,
curious.
I was thinking about how I love for you both that young childhood was a safe and whole place. And actually, Brett, like what you were just saying about living on the island and thinking what else is out there. I remember in the research for this book, coming a couple times all across narratives where people talked about the experience of growing up on the San Juans, where Sam and Elena lived, and the experience of realizing there was a mainland at a certain point in childhood. For a long time, you think like the island is the world. The island is the entire world. And I love that world. It is complete and it has everything that I want and everything that I could ever want. And it's the boundaries of the world that get bigger and start to encompass the idea of there being something else somewhere else. But I love that moment in youth where you think this is the whole thing and the whole thing is by design. I am satisfied by this. This is everything I've ever known. And I can't imagine at this moment in my development knowing anything else ever or even wanting to know. The idea of wanting to know seems foreign.
I don't know that I actually felt that way. I do
Yeah.
wonder if I felt like there has to be more than this without understanding that's what I was thinking.
Talk about Beauty and Beast. There
Right.
must be more than this provincial life.
Literally,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
there must be, like there has to be. That's the funny thing
Well,
about
yeah,
Florida. When
yeah.
you live in South Florida, you could drive for 10 hours and you're still in freaking
So
Florida.
huge.
Oh,
But I feel like that was also
So
something,
huge.
and maybe that was like an East Coast thing too, because I grew up in Pittsburgh. We didn't fly
I was
anywhere.
just there,
and
Brett. It was so
You
beautiful.
were?
Okay, so yeah, it was
I
just there
haven't
last
been,
week.
like, I haven't, since my mom passed, which was years ago,
Yeah.
I haven't been, but
no, you didn't
um,
drive anywhere, or you didn't fly anywhere. But still, if you drove 5 hours,
no, that's what
you
I'm
were
saying. You
somewhere
drove,
else.
no, but that's what I'm saying. We drove to Ocean City, New Jersey, but
Right.
there was never any, eventually my parents, we used to go to Colorado to ski, but
Yeah.
that was a huge thing, like getting on a flight the first time and getting on an airplane and being like, wow, we're going someplace. Like I didn't go to Europe until I was well into my relationship with Chip. I was well into my 30s or late 20s before I even left the country. And for many people, they don't. They never
Yeah.
will. And they never even will go
Yeah.
out of their space. Do you know what I mean? And I may not have the desire to.
It's so funny when I think about the experiences of space and more and elsewhere that I felt as a kid. Some of it was geographic, but also some of it as a very little kid was almost like habitual. My dad is very religious. So he raised my brother and I Quaker. We grew up going to Quaker meeting every week. My mom was not. They were both my parents were raised Catholic, and my dad converted with the zeal of a convert in college. So she did not go to Quaker meeting with us. And I had negative experiences at Quaker meeting as a kid. I did not enjoy. I was not a Quaker. I was brought to Quaker meeting every week, and that was a part of our childhood. But I was not a Quaker. But my mom got to stay home every week, and I wanted to stay home every week, but it was not an option to stay home every week. When I was 6 or 7 years old, because we were kids, we went with my dad to Quaker meeting. And my experience of the church was like, I want to do something else. Right. I can see that there's something else here, and I don't want to do this. These are also like small things like I'm thinking about these days because we just began our first season of day camp. But I did not like going to summer camp when I was a kid, which is like I don't like the taste of this caviar, or this is such a privileged thing to complain about. But I didn't like it, but there was not another option. Both my parents worked, and that's what we did. But I didn't like it. I didn't like being there. I felt like a weirdo. And so the idea of more was a feeling of more options. There must be a different option somewhere. I can see other people exercising different options. This might be, in fact, my mom is self-employed. She doesn't go to an office every day. She like works from home or travels or does whatever. And I thought, that's a pretty cool life. Why can't, here I was 6 or 7 years old. Why can't I do that? That sounds a lot nicer than making these God's eyes at camp.
Which circles right back to you talking about not wanting to be a kid, right? You like wanted to grow up very quickly. Okay, we cannot end on that note of I don't want to go to Quaker camp. So something
it's the most important. That's a big takeaway of this book. Don't go to Quaker camp.
Seriously, Quaker camp.
So us talking about Sam desperately wanting to escape. Among the things she does to make money is do online surveys. Yes. Are you an online survey doer?
I am not an online survey doer, although I did some online surveys for this.
Did you make okay money?
I did not make okay money. I got frustrated many times with the website. I also I think Sam is a little more relaxed about her internet privacy than I am. I felt very uncomfortable entering my information to these websites in the way that they would need to redeem the points that you made for online surveys. What I am is an internet addict. Sam is also an internet addict. She's on her phone a lot, but she is on it in very specific ways. She's like on these quiz websites, refreshing them, and she spends a lot of time on her, refreshing the screen and noting when she goes in and out of self-service. I do the similar thing, but unfortunately, most of my noting when I go in and out of service is because I'm on Instagram like a creep watching people like ice cakes on my explore page.
Yes. Ice cakes and ice skates.
Do you watch people ice skating?
Of course. Yeah, who doesn't? Everyone does.
Now it's all gymnastics.
Right? Now it's gymnastics because it's Summer Olympic time.
I'm also getting a lot of gymnastics. But which is also, of course, it all comes back to this notion of escapism.
Yes. Sure. I was just going to say it's escaping in a different way.
Yeah, she's escaping in this particular way. I also love an escape, but in a particular way. Simone Biles' floor routine is letting us all escape for a little bit.
Amazing. Yes. There's a lot to need to escape from.
And I, you know what? I'm not going to be brave enough to do a flip or two like Simone Biles. So bring it back to bravery.
Not even a fucking somersault.
No, oh my God.
I'm literally sitting here wearing a knee brace, 100%.
Like, going to the orthopedist today. Yeah.
Oh my God, this is age. This is us. This is adulthood. This is what I was so eager to get into. Is just
I know, seriously. I'm like, wait a minute, back to I need to be a kid again. What was I rushed.
On San Juan, running through the trees.
Yeah.
I know. It's so beautiful. When I was there researching, I was looking at this the other day, but when I was there researching the manuscript, they have like there's a main harbor in the town, and they have these little poems on plaques written by elementary schoolers. And there was this one that I was looking at the other day again that was just like, I love the island where my mother raised me. I love, my beautiful, just to live here in paradise, and I'm so happy. And I thought, that's the vibe. That's the
And
vibe.
you're sitting in the corner smoking a cigarette. You haven't seen the world, kid.
Try New York City sometimes.
Right.
No, but really that's it. There is no greener pasture. There is no greener pasture.
Right.
It is the greenest pasture, but watch out
It's
for the
greenest
bear.
pasture.
That's exactly right.
But there is so much to be said for that fundamental feeling of safety and being taken care of and thinking like the world is whole just as it is. And I think when we're lucky, that is a huge part of what it's like to be small. And the kind of desperation or dissatisfaction that can take over us is tense and exciting and thrilling and can take us very interesting places. But wow, the beauty of just saying, I love the island where my mother raised me is there's something fundamental to that.
And pure.
I hope and pure. And I hope it's in this book buried foundationally. And I hope it is something that all of us are able to access, that purity and that like the solidness of that. I'm safe. I'm home. I'm swaddled. I love it here.
Yeah. That's a great way
That's
to
a
end.
perfect ending.
Yeah.
And they lived happily ever after.
And they lived happily ever after.
We've just Disneyfied all of the fairy tales. Exactly. Congratulations on the book. We're so happy for you.
Thank you so much for talking to me. This was by far the most fun way to spend an hour ever. I'm
Yay.
so grateful to
Terrific.
you.
Enjoy
So grateful.
tour.
Yes.
Thank you.
Give Ann
Thank
Patchett
you.
a hug for us. Tell her
Hug.
friends at Gays Reading say hello. She doesn't know us, but I want her to.
Yes.
Okay, I've never met her before, and if I can get out a single word because I'm so starstruck, that is the word I will say. But I'm probably going to just pass out on the ground. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
so excited.
And you're the Parnassus Book Club pick. Congrats.
It means the whole world to me. Every single time I look at Parnassus's internet presence and she's just holding a tiny dog, I'm just like, this is it for me.
And
this
her
is
new
it.
tiny
Like,
dog. That's what's so great. That was
of
devastating.
course.
Killed me.
I
Killed
know,
me.
I
Just
know.
wept.
Ann Patchett is your bear.
Let me tell you, all my senses are gonna be alive when I meet her. She's gonna take me in and I'm gonna
Julia,
love it.
you're delightful.
Thank
Truly.
you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yes.
Thank
Everyone
you.
go
Have a
buy
wonderful
bear.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much. Apply some musk oil if you're so moved. And thank you guys so much for this.
Julia, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for being here. Everyone,
you,
make sure
Julia.
to check out Bear in our bookshop.org page. You could get a copy of the book or wherever you buy your books, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.